Good morning, church. This is your DUMC daily video devotion for Thursday, April 2nd, 2020. Something that I've heard people have been doing over these last few weeks of the quarantine season is they've been picking up some of the hobbies that maybe have fallen by the wayside over the years past. And when this was first getting started, when we were first adjusting to this new normal of being at home all the time, I picked up a guitar that I hadn't played in a couple of weeks. And I sat down and I played a chord, and it sounded awful. I mean, it was the kind of sound that immediately got screams from the other people in my house to stop playing the guitar. But it wasn't because I had forgotten how to play the guitar. It was because I have a 2-year-old who loves to, whenever she can sneak over there, loves to twist and untwist the tuning forks for all the strings. And so when I played that first chord, none of the strings made the note that they were created to make. But it reminded me that experience of something that John Wesley said when he was talking about the fall and what it means to have lost the image of God, something that's stuck with me ever since I first read it. John Wesley said that humankind has become like an instrument untuned. And I love that phrase, that we have become like an instrument untuned, because that makes so much sense when you think about all of the relationships that we have in our life, and how when we aren't giving them our best, when we aren't giving them the best attention, when we aren't putting our heart and soul and mind and strength into them, they can fall out of tune. We can fall out of tune in our relationship with God, out of tune in our relationship with creation, with the people that are in our life, and we can fall out of tune in our relationship with ourselves. And maybe you have noticed some of these things these past few weeks as we've been in this kind of time of stress and pressure. Maybe you have discovered some of those places where you've fallen out of tune. Maybe you found and are finally paying attention to the fact that your body hurts all the time, that you're tired all the time because you haven't exercised in 5 years, or you don't eat as well as you used to. Maybe you're discovering that some of these relationships that you have with the people who live in your house have fallen out of tune. You're spending all this time together and you're realizing, gosh, I've lost touch with who this person is, and our relationship has been neglected. Maybe you have found that you have lost touch with the earth. You've had all of this time to be outside on walks in your neighborhood, and you remember, gosh, there was a time in my life when I went for long walks in the woods, or when I kayaked on the river, and I have fallen out of tune with creation. The season of Lent, which we're in the middle of, is always a time that reveals to us where we've fallen out of tune in our relationship with God. Maybe you have been doing some of the spiritual practices, the spiritual disciplines that we've been teaching, and some have been harder than others because you've fallen out of tune in certain areas of your relationship with God. But to be an instrument untuned does not mean that we are a broken instrument, that we're an instrument that's not usable. To be an instrument untuned means that God can come into our life and can retune us, that God can retune us to match the song that the Holy Spirit is playing around us and at all times. To be retuned, if you think about it, especially like a guitar, to be retuned can be painful, because there's going to be some strings in your life that are going to need to be stressed and strained and tightened a little bit, places where you have just kind of gotten lazy. Relationships with other people, or your relationship with God is going to need to be tightened. Maybe there's some places, though, where the strings in your life are going to need to be loosened. Areas in your life where you've been holding on too tight, like at work, or other places where you've just become so caught up and wound up in something that God needs to relax that and loosen that. To be retuned can be a painful thing, but it is also one of the greatest gifts that God has to offer us. Because the more that we come back in tune with who we were made to be, the more we'll discover God's gifts of grace and peace and joy and love in our life. So what I want to encourage all of us to continue doing during this time, when we are away from our normal life, when we are at home, when we have maybe extra hours in the day to think about some of these things, is for us to consider, where have we gotten out of tune in our life? What are the strings in our life that need to be tightened? What are the strings in our life that need to be loosened a little bit? And then invite God to get to work. retuning us. Invite God to get to work and to show us what our part is in this process of transformation, in this process of being retuned, so that you and me and all of us together can make the kind of music, can make the kind of sound, the kind of noise, the kind of melody and harmony that God has created us to make. May the peace of Christ be with you.